Hello, and welcome to the We're Not Stumped podcast. I'm your host, Mike Boland, and I'm a congenital amputee of the right hand. In this show, I will interview other amputees and allow them to tell you their incredible life stories. I'll also feature family members of amputees and others who support the amputee community, all in an effort to discuss the challenges and triumphs of those living with limb loss. So stick around and listen to inspirational stories and find out why we say, we're not stumped. Well, hello everyone. Welcome to the We're Not Stumped podcast. I'm your host, Mike Boland, and today I've got a really fun show today. This is going to be great because it's something that I do myself and it has to do with golf. Bradley Schubert is going to be on, and he is on right now. Bradley is a below-knee amputee, and I found his profile because of his involvement where he is president of the Midwestern Amputee Golf Association. Bradley, thank you so much for being on the We're Not Stumped podcast.
Welcome.
Yeah, we're going to have a good time today. We always start the podcast with a segment I like to call In Your Own Words. So I'd love to hear your story.
Sure. So my story, I spent most of my youth playing, football, a little bit of golf, a little bit of everything. I found out that I was going to have my leg amputated back in September of 2014. I suffered from osteomyelitis, which is basically an infection that happens with diabetics. It starts off as a foot ulcer and just gets into the bone and becomes a bone infection. Not unlike a lot of amputees, it didn't happen suddenly. I wasn't from mass trauma, so I had time to come to grips with it before anybody loses their limb. So I didn't just wake up one morning and figure out my leg's going to be gone. I had to deal with a little bit of the pre-psychological stuff beforehand. I actually even joked with the doctor before the surgery, if I can't play golf anymore, doc, just, leave a gun and walk out of the room. I'll be okay. I had the surgery done in September of 14. But as it was coming up, I started looking at support groups. And I happened to run into the Midwest Amputee Golf Association, or MWAGA, I'm sorry. It's a world of acronyms, so you have to bear with me.
No, that's good.
So I ran into MWAGA's website and reached out to the then president. His name was Jeff Linton, and he got me involved by coming and riding around in the golf cart for that year's tournament that just happened to be 3 weeks before my amputation. So I got to start to meet a couple of amputees and see and being introduced to the game of adaptive golf, and it opened up my eyes. It wasn't going to be, all doom and gloom. I wasn't going to be able. These guys got around. These guys are, everything from teenagers all the way up to guys in their 70s and 80s now, playing golf and still having fun. So I went into the surgery with a better frame of mind. Fast forward a year later, 2015 in September, I came back to MWAGA and played my first one of my first tournaments. I'd actually played in a tournament a couple weeks before in Wisconsin. Went back to MWAGA, played in the tournament there. And then I got a little bit more involved. The year after that, I became a board member. And then the year after that, I became vice president and now president. So, the progression now, I've been the president of this organization since 2017. I'm more of a leader in the Midwest program here when it comes to adaptive golfers. I spend a lot of my time like this talking to people about adaptive golf. It's a thing of we want more people to come play. It's been a great lifeline for me because it's a physical activity that I can get out and go do. It's also given me the opportunity to do a lot of cool things. I can't tell you how many professional golfers I've gotten to meet.
Wow.
And events that I've gotten to go to because I am an amputee. I've even gotten to the PGA golf show a couple of times. It's a fun thing to do, and it's better than sitting on the couch. And these guys that we go in these tournaments with, and it's not just my tournament. There are other events now. I mean, I travel probably to anywhere from on a good year I can go to 12 events to 7 events just here in the Midwest alone.
Wow, that's a lot of events. And as you were telling the story, you talked about being able to meet others, like I guess at that point you were going to be. Is that something that you recommend to other people? Again, you said, hey, listen, you had some time to prepare. But even if you don't have time to prepare and you find yourself in a situation where you're an amputee, talking to others, is that something that you recommend?
100%. I was unfortunate to the fact that there was no amputee in the area that I could talk to about things. You know, how do you get up? How do you walk around to the bathroom? How do you do that? I mean,
Yeah.
little things that we take for granted
Yeah.
as a normie or somebody without missing limbs. Just doing simple little tasks that we didn't really take for granted, especially being a lower leg amputee like myself. I can only imagine just having to do one thing. How do you cut steak? Little things like that.
Yeah.
It's a thing of, for a leg guy like me, one of my biggest questions was, my biggest worry was, falling out of bed because I got up late at night or something like that, and I forgot to put my leg on. It was, how do you get around? I live off the Fox River here in McHenry, and we go on boats a lot. I can't tell you, I was worried about getting on and off boats too. How do you do it with one leg, and swim in the river and stuff like that? So we've got, there are questions everybody has. The Amputee Coalition has a peer support group that's out there now. I can tell you, I'm a peer counselor. So I get put together with people who are newly becoming amputees now. I think it's great. I wish they had it back in 14 in this area when I had my amputation done. It would have been a great resource. But absolutely, I spend a lot of, like I said, I spend a lot of time now. Even outside of the Chicagoland area, I get paired up with people from Cincinnati. I've gotten paired up with a couple of people from Ohio. It just locally here in the Midwest. How do I help them out and get them that information?
Well, I'll tell you, it doesn't surprise me in the few minutes we talked before the recording and even talking to you now, the passion really comes out in your voice. So it doesn't surprise me that you are out helping people now. Tell me more about the amputee golf and the whole association. You were saying that there's many different associations, I guess, across the country. Is that correct?
Yeah, MWAGA is one of many. There are groups that are specific for amputees. I could go down the list of regional ones. It starts off with the National Amputee Golf Association. That breaks down into five different regional organizations, which the Midwest is one of those. There's a Western, there's a Southwest, there's an Eastern, there's a couple others. But then within that, there's state organizations. There's actually Wisconsin, and Iowa, Michigan. There's a couple of others all through here in the Midwest. And we all have our individual events. We all roll under an alliance, the United States Adaptive Golf Alliance, run by the USAGA, which is just the United States Adaptive Golf Association. And they kind of give us a little governance of having things unified through competition, through clinical, through clinics and stuff like that to learn to play golf. Even in some cases, we have a ranking system that's through them that allows these players to be able to compete for something. But these events that we run, they're run by the individual organizations, and they can be a little specific and unique to each organization. Like we've got a North American One-Arm Golf Association, and they host a tournament that's only for arm amputees or those with arm loss, or the use of the loss of the arm, I should say. But then there's United States Blind Golf Association. Their tournament is just all blind players.
Wow.
You have events like mine through MWAGA that are all physical disabilities. So you'll have players that are not just amputee, they have the loss of the use of a limb, or they have blind players, short of stature, seated players, players with MS, cerebral palsy. It runs the gambit. So it's kind of you see a lot of different people with disabilities, but what they're able to do, and it's really uplifting. It's really something to see, to hear these stories, and to see people come and play a game that you've come to play and love.
Yeah, isn't that the truth? And it's great to hear that it's broader and more encompassing because my niche on the We're Not Some podcast is people like us, people amputees like us, but golf is a much broader game. So it's great that there's all sorts of different abilities, disabilities, however you want to say it, that are represented because it's such a great game. I shared with you that I love golf personally. I play quite a bit of golf. How do people find more about you and the organization that you represent?
Well, the easiest way is to go to midwaga.org.
Okay.
You can also, on that, there's contact information for me. I can give you my email address and everything, and people can reach out to me. Because of the fact that I do a lot of these things for Amputee Coalition and for the Midwaga, I'm not short-winded. I'll be glad to talk to you. It's a great thing to get somebody involved in golf and then to get a golf club in their hand and wanting to get them out somewhere. The nice thing is with my position, I know a lot of people outside of the Midwest. So if you're watching this podcast and we're not local to the Chicagoland area or the Midwest here, I probably know somebody anyways in your area that can get you together to play some golf.
That's great. I happen to be in Arizona as we're recording. I'm sure you know someone here, so that's really cool. And I'll make sure
We actually have a great tournament starting this weekend
Oh,
in Arizona.
well, gosh, if I would have known about it, I would have come in. I would have been happy to come in last place by being in it. I didn't. Yeah, I'm really anxious. I want to learn more about it. That's why I was so excited to run across your profile and again, thank you for being on. There's a couple of events that you have going on. I know there's something in September. There is
Yes.
the MWAGA Adaptive Golf Open. That's the 7th and 8th in September. And then the day before, the McHenry Country Club on September 6th, which is my wife's birthday, you have your annual fundraising event. That sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
So the Midwest Amputee Golf Association's Adaptive Open is probably the third or fourth largest adaptive tournament here in the United States. We host it every year the week after Labor Day, and it's held here at our McHenry Country Club, which is my home course actually. Benefits of being president, you can move it around a little bit. My home course. But the pros there and the members of the country club have welcomed us with open arms. And they from the first year they were there, the first year we were there, they were amazed to see us come play their course. And that's the feedback that we've gotten from them on a regular basis. But yeah, you'll look at about 80 players with different skill sets, different disabilities coming out and playing this home course. We get a lot of local support from local businesses here in the McHenry area, and even some nationally people come and represent us. We only host this one event a year. A lot of us, are working stiffs and, have something else to do too. We're not always focused on golf when we can get away. But the great thing is because each of us hold these events under the Alliance, we have about 40 plus tournaments a year that we can potentially go to.
That's great.
So you kind of have pick and choose which ones you can come to. I'm lucky enough that mine is one of the more well received ones where we can get a lot more people to come to, and it's because it's centrally located here in the Midwest and nationally too. So it's an easy drive. It's not a bad flight for anybody to come here. But yeah, our event is a 2-day event. It's 18 holes. Probably at one of the oldest courses here in the Midwest. And then we have a fundraising golf outing the day before. We try to do lots of fun things. We have holes where you can only use your 7-iron. Holes where you've got longest putt, longest or shortest, longest drive in the center of the fairway. So even with players who are short drivers, as long as it's in the center of the fairway, you've got just as good a chance as someone who bombs it. And then you've got both female and male and female. So we have got amputee ladies who come and play it. This is not just a male dominated sport. Your ladies can come out and play, and they have their own events as well. So it's a lot of fun. We have a good time doing things, and it's always fun to see new people come out and play in the event too. We've had a history lately of being able to pay for some of our new players to come and at least try the event for the first time.
Yeah, that's this whole thing sounds so exciting. I can't wait to learn more about it myself, and possibly play a couple tournaments here or there. That sounds like a lot of fun. I don't know if I buried the lead because I know that how passionate you are about the adaptive golf and everything you do. But I want to talk a little bit more about you. You were talking about your journey and how being able to maybe speak to others certainly help. But I want to even talk a little bit more. Was there anything surprising, especially in the prosthetic fitting? You're going through this for the first time, and what was that like to get fitted for a prosthetic and then go down that journey for you?
So for me, it was all brand new. I had, even though I knew I was getting an amputee, I was going to be an amputee, this process was all brand new.
Yeah.
I was lucky enough that, my local prosthesist at the time was SRT here in Illinois before they, moved out of Illinois. But my prostheticist let me be a part of the process,
Wow.
which I thought was great, and which is something I recommend to anybody who's getting a prosthetic made. Um, so even my test socket to the ones I wear now, I was almost hands on. I got to see the process being made. I got to see, pick which fabrics they wanted, to be my shell, go along with the carbon fiber. Um, I have an epiphany for loudmouth golf. So the same pants that John Daly wears. So
Oh,
all of my sockets that I've had made since my temporary socket have all been a design of loudmouth shorts or loudmouth pants or something. So like the current ones I have sugar skulls on them. The one before when I went to was the captain for the Phoenix Cup. My socket was a red, white, and blue stars,
wow.
Socket. So we've had a couple of variations over the years. I even had one that looked like it was got hit by a bunch of paintballs. It was called drop cloth, and it was just it's got my personality out of it. And then you see that a lot with prosthetics now is even getting the plain basic beige or the plain basic carbon fiber. People put a lot of personality in their own um, touch on their prosthetic, whether it's a favorite football team logo or baseball team logo, or even the guys that are veterans. I can't tell you how many sockets I've seen that have some reference to the military, the branch of service that they served um, in some shape or form in the socket, whether it's a logo or if it's Semper Fi or something along those lines. But
Yeah.
the amount of personalization that goes into for some of these legs now, even some arms, is relatively amazing.
I agree. I stopped wearing a prosthetic because I broke it, and I've told this story a few times on my show, so bear with me, people that have listened to the show. But I broke it when I was in 8th grade, and my parents asked me, "Hey, do you want to get another?" And I have it back here.
Mm-hmm.
And that was one of the things that I went to the Amputee Coalition event in 2022, which it was in Palm Springs. I think this year, I shouldn't say I think, this year it's going to be in Atlanta, Georgia, and it should be fun. It's going to be later this year. But when I saw the differences and the advancements, it would just amaze me. And you nailed one of them, the sockets and how much they've changed and the amount of personalization. What does that mean to someone like you to be able to do that?
Well, it means a great deal because you get that connection to the device. Honestly, if anybody who's not an amputee or not dealing with any type of limb loss, there is a separation anxiety that comes with losing a limb.
Yeah.
And to have that little piece of you, or and be something with a device that you're going to have to day-to-day interaction with.
Yeah.
You get personal bond with it. Like, it's kind of funny. My kids joke that I'm going to take your leg, and like they're going to run around the house without it. Like I can chase after them. So it's it's a personal thing, and you know what? I think that hits on it, and you see more of a bond. The bond is probably the right word on there, but do see people bonding with their prosthetic devices, especially in an environment where it's a socket they have to put on and off.
I think it's great. Like I said, and you mentioned your children. You have a wife, Heidi, and your children are Brooke and Tyler. How were they instrumental, or how were they through your process? I guess that's the best way to say it.
My kids went through it the same way I did, and it was interesting because my daughter was 5 at the time, and Tyler was relatively a newborn. But my daughter became my, for lack of a better word, my wet nurse. She got up, she got everything's for me. She went and got me a drink here and there when dad needed it. She did an awesome job that first year, really helping dad. My kids were introduced to adaptive golf and to people with disabilities just the same. And you can see a lot of kids that are standoffish and
Yeah.
they're still curious, but they're standoffish. They're scared about someone with, missing a leg or an arm or whatever
Yeah.
their physical limitation
Yeah.
is. It didn't take much long for my kids to understand that, that this is okay, that this is normal. My kids now, some of our adaptive golfing friends and play people with disabilities are some of my best friends, and they treat these people like their family, and it really is, that's how close they are. We had the gentleman who just passed
Mm.
this last year. His name was BJ. He was Tyler's best friend. He would take Tyler in the golf cart, and while we were playing golf, let Tyler drive the golf cart around, and to a 10-year-old kid, it made the world to Tyler at the time, and being allowed to do that, or not around dad, but he can get away with it. Um, my daughter, just the same. She come and help out with tournaments and help out with handing stuff out, and there's no fear. They'll talk to anybody.
Well, that certainly has a lot to do with the leadership that both you and your wife provide. I think that's a really great story. So, congratulations on that. And during this time, while you were going through this, you were also still working, and you are a multimedia and instructional designer for e-learning. And there's quite a bit. I mean, you were telling me a little bit about it before we hit record, and you've done things that have been translated to languages, as you said, you can't even read or talk in. So it's amazing. How were you, first of all, hopefully the job's still going well, and how were you accepted when you went back to your job?
So my amputation actually happened just before that job.
Okay.
I had worked in instructional design for a little bit beforehand, with a banking world, as a matter of fact, and so I got uh, recruited by another alumni from my college,
Nice.
and no bones about it. And she had no problems with me being an amputee. She's like, "That's not going to interfere with your job." And I'm like, "If we're both fine with it, let's run with it." But again, leading up to what I do, there are people out there that are working construction that have a leg amputated, and they worry about their job. Are they going to be able to perform it safely? Are they going to be able to do it? That was never a question with mine, because a lot of mine is spent like this conversation in front of a laptop. I have the benefit of working from home, so I only have to go into my office when I need to use the expensive equipment that we have for recording professionally. But with today's technology, I can do a lot of this stuff from home with a green screen. So we have the opportunity with some things to do relatively low key and low budget. But I also have some technically high capable filming stuff at my lab here in Rolling Meadows.
that's great. It's always good to hear that, because I know that some of my guests, including myself, to be honest, I was born with one hand, so going through the job force can be difficult at times. So it's good to hear that you're doing great on that and very well accepted. That's a great story. What is something that you would like people to understand as life as an amputee?
It doesn't end, and you're going to have other challenges. There are going to be some challenges that are greater and some challenges that are less. But just like anything else, it's a part of life. I think I just read a story that there are like 5.6 million
Yeah.
amputees living in the world today, in the United States today. We're around. We're not around people. So, and there are others like us. In my world, in adaptive golf, we have we'll have a tournament of 80 players. Yeah, 60, 70 of them are going to be, adaptive golfers. Even some tournaments will have lower turnouts. But if you go around, it's amazing how many amputees are actually out there. There are 3 that live in my town now.
Wow.
I didn't know them before
Yeah.
my amputation,
Yeah.
but I've gotten to know them through support groups and through just conversation and just knowing that they're out there. But it's again, it's not that I had my eyes closed to it. It's just my eyes are open to and seeing a lot more things now. But when it comes to the amputee life, for lack of a better word, it is a every day is going to present something new. It could be a challenge, it could be a benefit, but it's how you attack those challenges and how you attack those blessings that really affect how your headset is, day to day.
And how do you go about answering questions when you're out and about? Do you get a lot of questions from people just coming up to you at a restaurant going, "Hey, how did that happen?"
Yes,
Yeah.
and it varies. Some people will, thank me for my service, not even knowing that I was in the military or not. And I politely have told some people just thank you and then let them go about their day. Especially when I've been involved in parades and things like that, and people will say, thank you for your service, and you know, okay, thank you, you're welcome, and let it go. And because
Yeah.
I didn't want to get into a big, explanation of, hey, I'm really not, and make them feel like they have egg on their face. But I'll tell you a couple funny stories is
Please.
when I get kids asking me about my leg, and this goes back to my story about my kids. I don't want anybody to feel weird or to
Yeah.
feel they can't talk to someone about their amputation. So my kids and I have developed kind of a story of what happened to dad's leg, and it varies. There's a couple of different stories. There's one called the yarn shark, and the yarn shark is, people go hear about lemon sharks and tiger sharks, and they don't know the yarn shark's fake. So I was attacked by a yarn shark, and what a yarn shark actually is something that my daughter created,
I love this.
and it's a crocheted
Love.
sock that looks like a shark,
Oh,
and this goes on your stump.
love it.
And I have told kids before that I still have that shark because we kept it afterwards. So it's funny to have those conversations, and you talk about it. I've told some kids that it was a rabid squirrel. I told we had one child that was being fussy with mom, and he asked me a little bit later about what happened to your leg, and I said, well, I didn't follow my mom's instructions one time. This is what happened. And so, it really depends on how you talk about it. Adults, you can be a little more, upfront. Hey, I had, you know, I had an infection due to
Yeah.
diabetes and a couple of other, things. But it's one of those things of, the end result is you're still okay. You're still human. You're still approachable.
Yeah.
You're still, just like anybody else. To be absolutely honest, if it wasn't for, me wearing shorts a bunch,
Yeah.
you probably wouldn't even notice that I was an amputee because
Yeah.
my gait's so good. So it's having those conversations or interactions, I think, that are very important.
Yeah, I agree. And your child story reminds me of my daughters when they were in elementary school. Their friends always say, "What happened to your dad's hand?" They would tell them, "Oh, he lost it in the bologna factory." Like, I never worked in a bologna factory, but that's a good story. And
Yes.
I want to share too. I have Arizona Cardinals season tickets, and on Military Appreciation Day, I've had people buy me beers. And it's like, I know I'm like, it's kind of a slippery slope because you don't want to offend anyone for their thanks, and I'll never say no to a beer, but I don't want to take anything away from someone who did serve in the
Correct.
military. Yeah, it's an interesting thing, and I've had other people. Dan Moses comes to mind, another gentleman who says it's happened to him quite a bit. So I guess at the end of the day, just like I need to do sometimes in my own life, just maybe not assume things about people, including whether an amputee was in the military, because I certainly wasn't. I was born with one hand, and I couldn't be in the military. So it is what it is. But really, really good stories there. What's next for you? What are you looking forward to? What are you working on? I know you got that tournament coming up. I'm sure that's going to be quite a bit of your time moving forward. But what other things you have going?
So our golf season's just getting started.
Oh,
We actually have we've had one tournament already started this year. Earlier this year, we had the MWAGA's winner or the one armed event. Their winter regional was the beginning of February, and now we're going to start playing in Arizona a couple of times. I don't play in the Midwest, and I only play the Midwest events. I don't travel a ton, but looking forward to another golf season here in the Midwest. When it comes to other events, my life and family are keeping me going a million miles a minute. So I golf when I can. I have a local league here that I play in, so it keeps me busy. It keeps me busy enough, with kid schedules and things like that. So the big things with mine are all family related, and as well as the adaptive golf that I have, that are my real responsibilities here in the Midwest.
Well, that's you have a lot on your plate regardless. And if you ever are in Arizona, because that's where I'm at, man, please look me up and let's go play around. I look forward to it. You got me so motivated to learn more about adaptive golf. And I know the whole community in adaptive golf is doing such a great job. I'm going to link to everything that you had described. Anything else you'd like to share?
When it comes to playing golf, if you're interested, all you have to do is look. There are plenty of organizations out there that may not give you free golf clubs, but they will get you involved in the game. Where they'll have temporary clubs for you to use to try to go to a clinic to pick up the game of golf and actually take a couple of swings to get you started. But once you take up the game of golf, I mean, if it's proven nothing otherwise, that even guys that are blind, short of stature, have cerebral palsy, have MS, can all still play this game. And golf is a great game because good, bad, and different, we can all play. And I think when it comes to things that adaptive people can do and amputees can do, it's a great game to go out and play and to spend time with others. So I guess my parting statement: get out and go do something. Go play golf. Go have some fun. Life's too short to sit around and wallow about being an amputee. So it's one of those things where if you can get up and go. If you're into books, okay, there's a great book that you can get on Amazon. It's called The Power of Golf. I happen to have a hard copy here.
That's awesome.
But you can find this book on there. It's a collection of about 26 stories of different players. A lot of them I know. My own stories in there. Kind of a synopsis of just what I went through. My whole story's in there. So it tells you a little bit more about me and a little bit what I went through. But there are guys who, had traumatic injuries where, got hit by a car and they wake up and they're, missing a leg or missing an arm. Guys who are motorcycle accidents. We've got guys who, goofing around at railroad tracks, slipped, fell, and wound up losing both legs, due to a train. And you've got people who, like yourself, Mike, were born without the arm.
Yeah.
That are just, their stories are just as impactful as mine. Some of them are more involved in golf than mine, as golf didn't really get big into my life until after I had turned 22 by the time I had started. But it was really the impact of the game of golf on the life of the disabled is a big thing. So you can find that book. There's other books that are out there, but that's probably one of the more recent ones.
The Power of Golf, and it's on Amazon. Is that correct?
Correct.
Yeah, and you mentioned the good, bad, and the ugly of golf. I'll be the bad or the ugly, one of the two. But I love golf, and I always look forward to playing. There's something, that one shot that always makes you come back, right? It's one of those things. But another thing you hit upon is the camaraderie and the friendship. And I can tell, talking to someone like you, we hit it off right away. I feel like I've been talking to you for years now. And these are the types of people like Bradley here, that are involved in the amputee golf and what's the broader term for the adaptive golf.
Yeah.
Those are the people. And it's so important that we all get out, as you said, to play, to meet people. And I can't thank you enough for spending a few minutes today with me on the We're Not Stumped podcast, because you've really enlightened me, and I really appreciate your time.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me on. It was a great opportunity to get to talk a little bit about golf and to talk a little bit about me. I'm not so much talking about me as I like talking about golf, but and don't feel bad about the being bad part. As good as golfers as some of that are out there that are adaptive players, guys like Chad Pfeiffer, who you might have seen on the Big Break and stuff like that. There's 20 guys like me and you who are shooting in the 90s on a regular basis. So everything all good from there.
But having fun.
Absolutely.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Mike.
That was the We're Not Stumped podcast, hosted by Mike Boland. If you want to be a guest on the program, reach out to Mike at his email address, mike@mikeboland.com. This podcast is produced by One Hand Man Productions. If you are looking to start your podcast, go to onehandmanproductions.com.